Hello, everyone. Welcome to The Greater Good, put on by the San Diego Harbor Police Foundation through gracious donations. With me today, I'm really excited about my guest today. It's Keelin Washington. Not only is she a friend, but she's an amazing, amazing person who has a story to tell us today, which is very unique and heartwarming, along with tragic. So, hi, Keelin. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
You look great today. I
Thank
love it.
you.
We were just talking before the show about how beautiful Keelan is. She's got that great complexion that unfortunately I never had. But we just deal with life the way it's given to us.
Yeah, it's the
Yeah,
San Diego weather.
it is. Yeah, that it does yeah, especially those little carcinoma things,
Yeah.
out in the sun all the time.
Yes.
So Keelan Washington is a victim advocate, supporter of people in the human trafficking world. She's an advisor for Generate Hope here in San Diego and Coronado as well. They've got, Colorado. You've got a new facility out in Colorado. And why don't you tell us a little bit about what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. So at Generate Hope, as a survivor leader and mental health coach, I really get the opportunity to do life with survivors of human trafficking. And that really looks like from the time that they get into our care, they're sometimes rescued. Sometimes we have to fly out and pick them up, get them from their traffickers.
Right.
And we help them reintegrate back into society successfully. So
Mhm.
I get to, if they are looking to go and prosecute their traffickers, I will stand in the court system with them and help them navigate the legal system. If it's looking at getting their criminal record expunged, I help them with that as well. I do therapeutic groups for them to understand different trauma components and mental health struggles that they do suffer a lot of times coming into our program. So I always say I have the best job, to be honest, because I get to see women who've come from horrific trauma and watch their resilience to be able to overcome that and live a healthy, successful lifestyle. So for me, it's no greater
Wow,
blessing.
what a cool job. How long has Generate Hope been around?
For over 10 years now.
Nice.
Yep, over 10 years now. We have 2 safe houses. And then again, like you mentioned, we just opened our third house in Colorado. So we are really, really excited to have that opportunity because there's just not enough resources and enough residential programs to house survivors. So to know that we're making some real headway into providing that for them has been really great.
That's a really interesting point that you bring up about resources. As you know, full disclosure here, Keelan is part of our team, our Help Stop Human Trafficking team here in San Diego County. So we do out speaking engagements. A little bit later, we're going to show a brief introduction of our human trafficking awareness training program. But resources is a big deal. When we launched our Help Stop Human Trafficking awareness program earlier this year, one of my concerns was, we first of all, we want people mostly in the hospitality and tourism industry to become aware, to look for signs of trafficking. And then, it's the see something, say something mentality. But the rub, in my opinion, is that as we create this awareness with thousands of people, which we're already on our way to doing, then where are the resources to take care of them? If we can get them out of the life, where do we go? And in San Diego County, unfortunately, there are how many beds total?
We have about 50 total throughout the state, but we definitely need more. Yeah.
The state. So 50 beds in the entire state. And how many in San Diego County?
I'd have to check my resources on that, but it's a lot smaller than that, unfortunately. I've known of other houses that have opened, but like our program, so with our houses, we have 6 beds in each safe house. So we already have 12. And I know of 2 other programs that have housing too. So, and then thinking about when we're talking about HT specific, human trafficking specific programs, because we do have like crisis houses, but that's not human trafficking specific. So real resources that address human trafficking, we definitely need a lot more.
Yeah. Yeah. So, for our listeners, and I'm told by the IQ podcast people here that we have somewhere around 50,000 or more people that listen to this podcast. And so if there's people out there that have interest, please feel free to contact myself. I think you'll see our website address down at the bottom of the show here, and let us know, and we'll help direct you to where you can hopefully work on a program where we could get more beds here in San Diego County. So what is it that qualifies you for this job?
Yeah, great question. One of my qualifications was I went to school to get certified as a mental health coach. I knew that I wanted to help survivors of human trafficking, and what I found to be very profound in feeling that I needed to be educated enough to understand their mental health state.
Right.
So my first background would be an educational piece, also going through psychology and social work degrees to kind of help understand them from a holistic approach. But what really drove me to this position was because I'm a survivor of human trafficking
Oh my
myself.
gosh.
And that really created a calling for me to say, hey, I've been able to get out of this situation. It's time for me to give back. So it's just been a calling for me ever since.
Oh my gosh. So if you're comfortable, can you tell us a little bit about what that experience was like?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, like a lot of people, like trafficking in the very beginning was an issue that I thought was a third world issue. It didn't happen here in San Diego. We see it in movies, we see it in the media, and it's so foreign to us that we don't believe that it happens here. But for me, I experienced it when I was 14 years old. And
Oh my God.
I met my trafficker when I left the mall, one of the local malls here in San Diego. And as I was leaving, me and a group of friends, we ran into some guys and they asked for our number.
Yeah.
We exchanged numbers, and I think things really did progress from there on because text messages led to phone calls led to us hanging out.
Of course.
And for about maybe 4 or 5 months, we were just dating. I felt like I was in a normal relationship, that I was loved and he cared for me. And he just really created this really great support system. Well, so I thought.
Right.
And one day he had introduced the idea of selling myself for money. And again, so foreign. I just didn't believe that it happened. But he told me, I'm behind on my rent and I need financial support. And I've loved on you this entire time and I've given you so much. Can you just help me? And really not wanting to disappoint this person. Initially, I did agree. And I was like, okay, what does this even look like, first of all? And with the promises of it's going to be for a short time, that I was going to be safe, nothing would happen to me. And I think to understand the component of this is at the time I was 14, but he was 21 at the time.
Big difference.
Yeah. Big difference, big psychological difference from the understanding of the manipulation that was happening that I was not aware of. But shortly after agreeing to this, I was sexually assaulted by one of my buyers. And I think that a part of that was I was so hurt that, yes, by the sexual assault, but the fact that he didn't keep his promise.
He didn't. No.
I wasn't safe. He didn't protect me. And I went back to the hotel that very same day and I was like, I can't do this. This is not for me. We have to find another way. And as soon as those words fell out of my mouth, he just brutally beat me.
Oh
and as he's beating me, he's telling me like I couldn't leave, that if I tried to leave, not only would he kill me, but he'd kill my mother too.
Oh my God.
And that night he beat me unconscious. And I woke up. I remember waking up and what seemed like a couple hours later and managed to get myself off of the floor. And as I did, he came back into the room and he told me to get in the car. And I believe that that's really where my journey with human trafficking began. He took me out of the state of California. He sold me all over the country, over a dozen states in total. The abuse ended up turning into torture at some point. So I think being in this life at the age of 14, really not understanding what was really happening at that time. And like, I think back to it because about a month after he had taken me, the news had put me and him up in San Diego as me as missing and him as kidnapping me.
Oh.
And they didn't find me. I didn't return. I was trafficked for over 3.5 years.
Good God. That's just an incredible story.
Yeah.
And here you are today, this vibrant, strong, accomplished woman.
Thank
with a child of your own.
Yes.
I understand she's 15, I think you told
Yes.
me. And she has a remarkable mother to help her guide her way through life. Well, that's a great story. Well, if we have a minute, maybe we can get producer Sarah to put on a short video that kind of encapsulates what our Help Stop Human Trafficking is all about. It's an awareness program through the San Diego Harbor Police Foundation in collaboration with District Attorney Summer Steffen, the Human Trafficking Task Force here, local law enforcement, the Harbor Police Department. We had a number of people involved in the production of this awareness training, which, by the way, meets all of the requirements of AB 2034 under the state of California. So this training is being offered free of charge throughout San Diego County to mostly tourism and hospitality venues. Keelin and myself and Corey Voss and other members of our team, we've already been out to Sequam Casino to begin our training program out there. And I think, is it May 3rd?
May 4th, I think it is.
May 4th, we're going back to Sequam, and we're going to be training somewhere around 500 people. But this is all done online normally, but for these casinos and other special places, we'll show up and do the training right there in person with them. So how are we doing, producer Sarah over here?
Human trafficking is modern day slavery.
It's turning somebody into a product.
To simply use them to make money. The victims don't see a penny.
Human trafficking in San Diego is huge.
The second largest criminal industry behind the drug industry.
The victims come across any one of us, and we wouldn't even realize it.
Human trafficking happens when a person, a trafficker, controls another person, a victim, and sells that victim to a buyer for money. The buyer uses and abuses the victim for sex or labor. These victims, who are treated like objects for sale, are men, women, and children, girls and boys.
This crime of human trafficking is so despicable. It steals the body and the soul of people.
I was 14 when I met my trafficker.
Keelin Washington went to a mall in San Diego with friends and met a guy.
Extremely charming.
And gave him her number.
Text messages led to phone calls, led to us meeting in person. He would take me on dates, buy me clothes, jewelry, and just shower me with affection.
All lies. Eventually, he sold her for money to have sex with other men. When she said no, he beat her until she lost consciousness.
He was telling me that I wasn't able to leave, that if I tried to leave, not only would he kill me, but he'd kill my mother too. I was sold all across the country.
Victims of human trafficking, they're manipulated by their traffickers, and so they will not reach out to the police and report their trafficker, nor will they go up to someone and say, help me and save me.
There are thousands of victims and traffickers among us in San Diego, in our airport, our hotels and motels, restaurants and bars. You are in a unique position to help stop human trafficking.
People in the tourism industry will notice the subtle signs, those red flags, and they'll have a chance to be part of saving a life.
If one person would have stood up for me, I would not have went through 3 years of slavery.
Welcome to the training. Thank you for helping us stop human trafficking. I'm San Diego County District Attorney Summer Steffen.
And I'm Chief Mark Stanbrook with the Port of San Diego Harbor Police. Because you work in San Diego's tourism industry, you are in a unique position to help stop human trafficking.
Human trafficking is a form of modern-day slavery. You will learn the signs on how to spot a potential victim of human trafficking or a human trafficking situation.
And you'll learn to report what you see. You can help save lives.
Wow. I've helped create and watch this entire video, the entire training, just like you, 100 times? Mm-hmm. And every single time I watch it, I get more and more irritated that this this what used to be called a victimless crime, because people who were really victims and survivors in this life were called prostitutes, and they were prosecuted by law enforcement. They had criminal records. They were put in jail. They were demeaned. They were thought of as lesser human beings. And in fact, none of that is true. Not one single bit of it is true. And in fact, Keelin, how much money did you make when you were being trafficked?
So my quota was 2,000 a night and nothing less.
And how much of that did you get to keep?
None.
Zero. So these promises of wealth and fame and fortune to be out and about, be a social icon in various manners is all just nonsense. None of it is true. And the way that they get away with this heinous crime is through force, coercion, rape, physical violence, the intimidation of family and friends. I know that there was recently a woman who was being trafficked here in San Diego, and the pimp had control of her dog, that she was in love with this dog. And so she didn't want to meet her quota or perform these heinous acts anymore. And so the trafficker threatened her with killing the dog, and she refused, and then he killed the dog. So, I mean, somebody might say, well, that's just a dog. Well, it really isn't. That's a person's, soulmate. We all have, children or animals that are very important to us in our lives. And these traffickers, as you know firsthand, they are extremely manipulative. They are very sophisticated. In particular, tell us a little bit, if you could, about what's been happening during the pandemic with trafficking.
Yeah, I think we would naturally think that it may have slowed down. I think the manipulation and thinking about, so how do you change that when COVID happens, right? Like what is the shift? What we've actually noticed is it's just moved online. So what we see is now we have OnlyFans that are coming up, and people think that all of this is a choice, but there's a lot of victims who are on OnlyFans. I mean, there's the case against Pornhub right now, where Pornhub has a lawsuit against them because they can't clarify that these videos aren't human trafficking survivors.
Mm-hmm.
So it just looks different, but
Yeah.
our cases continue to go up. I mean, again, it speaks to the manipulation.
Mm-hmm.
If people want to use people and sell people, and they want to gain money, they will find other means to do it. So
Yeah.
sometimes we think COVID would have stopped it. They just changed the way it looked.
Again, the sophistication. Dan Deerdorf from the Human Trafficking Task Force told me that the average age in San Diego County used to be 16 years old, and now it's dropped down to 14 years old. So, and there's a margin on each side of that. So that means they're probably young women. It's mostly women.
Yes.
Right?
Yep, absolutely.
So,
And thinking
12-year-olds,
Mhm.
15, 16 up to, whatever age.
Yeah, absolutely. And if we talk about familial trafficking, like we've had cases as young as 2. So where a victim
2
is
years old.
2 years old who is being trafficked by their parent, a guardian. Familial trafficking tends to happen a lot younger.
It makes my stomach turn. So these people are without conscience. This is all about the money. I read in a report, I could be wrong on the numbers, but I read the average revenue stream to a trafficker in San Diego County was anywhere from $500,000 to $600,000 a year. And if you alone, your quota was $2,000 a night, and how many women did the pimp have in his stable?
Anywhere between 1 to 3.
1 to 3,
Mhm.
because numbers higher than that, it's difficult to manage.
Yep.
Unless they have a bottom girl,
Mhm.
right? So maybe you can tell our listeners what a bottom girl is.
Yeah, absolutely. So a bottom, and which again is a victim as well, because what happens is that they will set up one of the women to seem like she's more favored. So when that happens, she actually can also help run the stable. But I think sometimes when we see that, we also look at her like it's a choice. Like, well, you're
Mhm.
running these other women.
Mhm.
When looking at it, she's doing that so she doesn't get abused like the other women do.
Mhm.
Or what will happen is the trafficker will set up a bottom girl and then send her to go recruit. So even when we
Mhm.
think about recruiters, we naturally think like, well, this is a choice.
Right.
Well, no, sometimes recruiters are actually victims as well.
Yeah, it's really frightening. So if our listeners would look at our logo, it's a woman with her hands like so, and there's a butterfly that's flying out of in between her hands like that. But below here at the wrist, there are chains, and those chains are very muted, and we did that intentionally because it describes this phenomena called what do we call them? The handcuffs. I forgot the name of it. I had a brain, you know what? Invisible handcuffs. Sorry.
Yeah.
There it is. All right. All the synapses are firing again here. Stop laughing, Sarah. This happens to me a lot. I can't help it. So these invisible handcuffs, I mean, you'll see as you experienced yourself being trafficked, you were allowed to travel, to go from one airport to the next. And I'm sure you were met at point A and point B by another pimp who would then, manage you for your time there. So as a person out in society, if you have interest in helping to mitigate this heinous crime, you can go to our website at www.helpstophumantrafficking.org and request access to this free training, and it'll help you understand the signs to look for. But whatever you do, if you do spot something that you're suspicious about, and by the way, you don't need to be right, you just have to have some suspicion that it's off. Whatever that being off means, it could be that the woman is wearing inappropriate clothes for that time of year, or she seems disoriented, or she is unwilling to have eye contact. Perhaps she'll have tattoos that signify ownership by another person. All of these signs are very well articulated in our training. But the most important thing is, if you do see something, to say something and report it to local law enforcement. And if you believe it's a minor or that there's violence involved, then call 911 right then and there, and make sure that you don't personally get involved in this altercation potential removal of someone from this horrible life. These traffickers are extremely vicious. They're violent. They are predominantly gang members, and they are unafraid to use whatever's necessary to accomplish their goals. So now that everyone's depressed, and
I hope not.
talked about this horrible crime. No, it's not depressing. What it is for me, it's eye-opening. And I know that when Corey Voss and I were creating this training with the help of a lot of other people, we were really mildly depressed, not because we haven't seen bad things in our lives, but to have it so prominent and right here in San Diego, right in our face. And in fact, District Attorney Summer Steffen tells us that over 90% of every high school in San Diego County has had reported cases of human trafficking. Is that your experience as well, Keelin?
Absolutely. I work also with Point Loma Nazarene University, and a part of their program is called the No More program. And this program lets us go into high school and middle schools and teach on what human trafficking is. And a part of that, which I absolutely love, is that I get the opportunity to share my story with them and relate and meet them where they're at. But again, I love that number of 90%, because 90% of the time after our presentation is over, I have students coming up to me and telling me that they've experienced it, that they know somebody who's experienced it, that somebody in their family is currently experiencing it, and how can they get help.
Scary. Yeah. So that could be Rancho Santa Fe, could be Encinitas, Santee, National City, El Cajon, you name it. Oceanside, San Diego, that trafficking is occurring. And you talked about familial trafficking, so that a lot of these, and again, I have to say this, it's mostly women that are trafficked. I mean, there is a small percentage of men that are trafficked, but that's not nearly as prominent. The trafficking starts in the family, either because of abusive relationships of the parent or parents. Alcohol is usually involved, or drugs are involved in those families. Obviously, economics play a big
Yes.
part. They're desperate to earn money, and they have this renewable resource. And I hate to use that term, but it's so accurate. Because if I'm a drug dealer, I sell you the drugs and the drugs are gone, and transactions over. I mean, I might come back, but I would be buying different drugs. But if I'm a human trafficker, I have this renewable resource in the form of a beautiful human being that is being manipulated and managed and coerced through, awful means for 10, 20, 30, 40 times a day with different people. So I'm compelled to ask you, here you are, just a very together person.
Thank you.
A really marvelous human being. And you have to keep telling the story over and over again. And how does that affect you?
Yeah, I think it affected me a lot when I first started to share it, but I think that there's so much power in it. Like, I think that there's not a lot of survivors now who ever get the opportunity that I get to. And for whatever reason that is, like, the mental health component that comes with the survivor after she's trafficked. Some survivors never get out of the life of exploitation.
Mhm.
And for me to be able to stand in a space to give back is honestly an honor and a privilege. Doesn't mean that it's always easy. It's difficult, but I will say that it's always worth it. And when you're called to do something, when you stand in spaces where, like we're doing today, and listeners can actually make the difference, it's always going to be worth it.
Yeah.
So,
wow. You're such a moving person.
thank you.
I'm just so happy to know you. So Susan Muncie started Generate Hope, and you work there, and you have, just have women that are living on site, or your two facilities here. I mean, you're counseling people, so you're out into the community. I know that you're very well recognized within the San Diego County trafficking community, if there is such a thing as that. But it's pretty exciting. So tell me, where do you find happiness in your life?
Ooh, that is a good question. Honestly, I find it doing things like this.
Really?
As difficult as it is, I feel like I'm in my natural element. I mean, there's no greater gift than to be able to make change in a world, no matter how difficult that is. And I think a part of that also is in the work that I do with Generate Hope, because yes, we see these women come from so much pain and so much breakage. But when you see redemption, when you see that the thing that was meant to break them can't stop them from their dreams, like, there's just a peace that comes with that. And that is always how I'm just fulfilled. Like, again, it's hard work. It's not easy. But again, leaving a footprint, leaving a legacy, changing lives. I mean, there's just no greater gift for me than that. So.
Wow. Well, that's really compelling. So is there an average time that, it takes a trafficked woman to kind of get back to some form of normalcy?
I think it's going to be different for each one. I'm definitely thankful when I got out of the life of exploitation and my trafficking, there weren't any resources.
Ooh.
So there was not trauma-informed therapists. There were not safe houses. There was just nothing available. So my process naturally took a lot longer. I had to seek out all of those resources on my own. What we're finding now is that, and this is why our program is 2 years. Up to 2 years, they can stay longer if needed. But what we're finding is 2 years is a great middle ground to say, hey, let's address the trauma. And that's what they get in our recovery program. It's solely focusing on trauma. It's how can we help you navigate this if we're looking at medication, if we're looking at coping skills. And then they get to our transition program where they're really understanding what does it take to live in society after this. So what we're seeing to be extremely successful to not have to ever go back to another program, we're seeing it usually takes about 2 years.
I know District Attorney Summer Stephan refers to it as the stealing of your soul. So, that's, there's a religious connotation there, but that's really what the slavery is about. They've actually taken the person out of the person and manipulated them, much like, people victims of the Holocaust and other, trauma in their lives, PTSD, all of these forms of mental coercion, mental slavery are evident in this horrific criminality. So, once again, if you see something, say something, I highly recommend that you go to our website at www.helpstophumantrafficking.org. There's an access button in the top right side of the web page. You click on that button and it'll ask you a couple little questions, and then you'll get access to that training at no cost in hotels, motels, airports, law enforcement. I will say, because of Keelin and Corey and myself and others that are on our team, we have had enormous, like, big requests thus far. I mean, the casinos, the airport, law enforcement, hotels. And I do want to talk a little bit about May 10th, which is coming up. I'm really excited. I mean, this is going to be probably one of the coolest things that we've done so far. So through our foundation and with the generous support of Qualcomm, they are producing a live stream forum for us. And so on the stage of this production, I mean, it's a big production. It's not like just a Zoom call. This is like highly produced event. Will be myself, Summer Steffen, Keelin Washington, for instance. She's one of the stars. And also Fred Taco from the San Diego County Lodging Association, who's like a big deal. Corey Voss, who's a rock star. Corey Voss is responsible for most of the production of our training, all of the imagery. It's her voice in the background telling us all about it, along with Keelin's and other people. So that's on May 10th at 5:30 p.m. That'll go out pretty much everywhere in the county, right?
Yes.
Yeah, we're expecting to have, last number I heard, anywhere from 700 to 1,000 people that are going to be watching this event. I mean, even Sarah, she's getting a link. Just because of the reach of IQ Podcast, by the way, they produce this show for me. They're amazing. None of this show would have happened without Sarah Morgan and Brett Davis. They do a marvelous job here at IQ Podcast at Attorney King Studios in Coronado. So we're just excited to be here. So in all of your experiences, the young woman that you are, what is the most dramatic thing that happened to you when you were being trafficked?
The most dramatic.
Yeah.
I think something that greatly impacted me and something that really took me a long time to kind of work through and get over is that I think when we think about the question of why didn't you leave, right? When we talk about the invisible handcuffs, and people look like these women and these survivors and victims look like they're free to walk away.
Right.
But I think the psychological manipulation that happened, not only with the threat of my parent and my family, but the people who were supposed to keep me safe were actually my buyers.
Yeah.
So, and if that was, I was put in jail and we're looking at the guards who are supposed to keep me safe. I'm thankful that we've come a long way in understanding what human trafficking is. But in my experience, like, I've just had all types of enforcement that were supposed to keep me safe that didn't. And I'm looking at the healthcare system when they're supposed to keep me safe and the doctors are supposed to keep me safe. But then they were my buyers.
Right.
So I think that ultimately, when I think about something that really took me a long time to get over, was seeing the worst parts of humanity and knowing that my buyers look like everyday people and were everyday people who were teachers and lawyers and politicians. When I look back at people in the NFL and I look at who my buyers were, and then coming back out and trying to live a normal life, I think was one of the hardest things that took me to get over. And it took me a long time to do so.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
So you were abandoned, essentially. You were just treated as a piece of chattel.
Yep.
Just another item to be acquired. Yeah. How frightening. Well, there are a couple of programs here in San Diego County. One's called Fresh Start. I'm sure you're familiar with that. And that's law enforcement has made good strides towards re-identifying these victims, as opposed to calling them criminals or prostitutes and labeling them with a penal code. What is it? 649, I believe.
So.
Right. So instead of that, they're really doing a good job of kind of recalibrating their thinking about these women they're not in this business. Who wants to be a slave? No one wants to be trafficked. And so there's that program. So Fresh Start, that helps these women get their criminal records erased. And that's no charge. It's run by the County of San Diego, and District Attorney Summer Steffens, largely responsible for creating that program. She's iconoclastic throughout the nation as a leader in human trafficking. And then there are a couple of organizations, like there's A Safe Place, which Diane Doherty from the city of San Diego manages that. It's called the Family Justice Center. And I think they're rebranding it to call it A Safe Play. And it's a really forthright, great opportunity for victims of abuse, domestic violence, human trafficked women. Again, mostly women. They can go there. It's safe. They can do their court appearances remotely, as opposed to having to go stand in the courtroom in front of your trafficker, for instance. If in fact the law enforcement has enough evidence to prosecute, which that's another big issue. Funding is a huge problem in terms of law enforcement. Although I will say that the Port of San Diego Harbor Police currently has the largest human trafficking liaison team in the United States, the nation. It's a relatively mid-sized police department, 140 sworn officers, of which 13 are either trained or in the process of being trained in human trafficking liaison work, which means that if they see or hear of a victim, instead of an officer that's not specialized trained in that area, they'll send one of those liaison officers out so they can really work the system properly and help these victims and get them to the right place. So this has really been interesting for me. And thank you very much for coming out and spending time with myself and Sarah Morga, she's very quiet today. She's busy over there. I'm not sure what, but without Sarah and her great team, this program wouldn't occur. And I have to say, I want to thank my foundation, the San Diego Harbor Police Foundation, for supporting this program so that we can get these messages out, be it human trafficking or whatever the issue happens to be. But thanks so much for coming out and spending time with us today.
Yeah, thank you. I'm completely blessed and honored to be a part of the program and to making change. I think it's important as a survivor when we have people do life with us and believe us and create space for us to have voices and to be heard. I think it's a real gift to survivors. So thank you for allowing me to take this journey with you as well.
Well, we're thrilled to have you. I mean, we have interviewed a lot of victims, and Keelin came to us in a blessed way, for sure, just because of your unique qualities as a human being. Not only are you so able to articulate this drama that occurred in your life, but then if you look at what you've done with your life, so there is hope.
Yes.
There really is hope. And if there's no other message that we get out today, it's that if you are being trafficked, or if you believe someone you know is being trafficked, say something, see something, or see something, say something. There is hope.
Yes.
Just reach out to us, Generate Hope, local law enforcement, and they'll offer you some solutions.
Absolutely.